I'm 32 years old, a senior investment strategist in New York, and by every external metric, I've built a life anyone would be proud of. But for as long as I can remember, no matter what I achieved, it was never enough for my father. This year, I did something I never thought I would. I bought him a brand new Mercedes S-Class. Not because he needed it, not because I had to, but because deep down, I still hoped it might mean something. That maybe, just maybe, he'd finally say the words I'd spent my entire life aching to hear: "I'm proud of you." Every year, my family hosts a grand reunion at my parents' estate in the suburbs of Boston. It's always scheduled conveniently close to Father's Day, making the gathering less about bonding and more about celebrating Richard Harrington, my father, and the man everyone else seems to admire. This year, I was determined to stand out, to finally be seen. I'd saved up from my recent promotion, skipping vacations, fancy clothes, even delaying upgrades to my apartment, all for this one gesture. The car was perfect, sleek black, top of the line, every luxury feature you could imagine. The kind of vehicle he once casually admired at a golf club event. I had the key in a little velvet box. My hands shook when I tucked it into my purse, alongside something far more personal, a sealed envelope containing a DNA test result that could upend everything. I didn't know yet whether I would show it, whether I even had the courage to say what I suspected. But I knew one thing: this was the year I was done being invisible. Little did I realize that by the end of that night, my entire identity would shift. Not because of the car or the reunion, but because I would finally understand why my father never loved me the way I had hoped he would. Growing up in the Harrington household was like living in a beautifully decorated museum, grand, polished, and cold. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. My father, Richard, was a successful real estate developer. My mother, Elaine, was elegant and composed. My older brother, Jack, was the golden boy, and my younger sister, Sophie, was the darling peacekeeper. Then there was me. I always felt like the extra puzzle piece in a box that didn't quite belong to the set. My earliest memories are filled with subtle corrections, pointed comments, constant comparisons. If I brought home a B, my father wanted to know why it wasn't an A. If I made the debate team, he asked why I hadn't become captain. Jack could do no wrong. He was athletic, charming, and always seemed to know how to win our father's approval. He followed in Richard's footsteps, joined the family business, and was rewarded with admiration and praise. Sophie, with her gentle charm, knew how to soothe tensions and tiptoe through the emotional landmines. I, on the other hand, tried too hard and always fell short. My mother was kind when my father wasn't in the room. Around him, she seemed to shrink, like someone who had learned that silence was safer than resistance. She never defended me, never stepped in. Her love was conditional too, tied up in her fear of disrupting the fragile family image my father worked so hard to preserve. Looking back, I see how much I internalized his disappointment. I thought if I worked harder, achieved more, spoke less, or smiled more, maybe then he'd see me. Maybe then I'd be enough. In high school, I graduated top of my class. My father's only comment: "You'll need more than grades in the real world." When I earned a full scholarship to Cornell, he scowled and said I should have gone to his alma mater. It was never about me. It was always about the reflection I cast in his eyes, and it never matched what he wanted to see. So I pushed myself harder, not for ambition, but for recognition. And for decades, that pursuit defined me. But no achievement could fill the void left by a father's absence, not physical absence, but emotional vacancy. That kind of emptiness echoes for years. After graduation, my father extended an offer I knew wasn't genuine, a low-level position at his company. It was clear I'd never be more than a token hire, the daughter he tried to help. I declined politely, knowing the truth that I needed to make it on my own or never be seen for who I truly was. So I moved to New York with 2 suitcases and a backpack full of resumes. I slept on my friend Megan's couch for 3 months, lived on instant noodles, and applied to every financial firm in the city. Eventually, I got my foot in the door at a mid-tier investment company, working entry-level hours with intern-level pay. I didn't tell my father when I got hired. I didn't tell him when I earned my first bonus. I didn't tell him when I got promoted twice in 2 years, because I already knew what he'd say. It would either be dismissed, or worse, credited to someone else. 8 years later, I was promoted to senior investment strategist at a top-tier firm, the youngest person in the company's history to hold that title. My name started appearing in industry reports. I was invited to speak on panels. Clients requested me by name. And yet, none of that seemed real, because the one person I had been trying to impress for 3 decades still saw me as an underachiever. When I signed the paperwork for my dream apartment on the Upper West Side, I finally felt proud of myself. Truly proud. I bought the Mercedes as a kind of punctuation mark, a statement, maybe even a peace offering, a way to say, look, I made it. Aren't you proud? But in truth, I wasn't buying a car. I was trying to buy something no child should ever have to earn, a parent's unconditional love. I convinced myself the gesture would change something, that this reunion would be different, that the luxury car, polished, expensive, and parked in his driveway, would finally be the bridge between us. Looking back, I see the desperation behind the gift. I see the little girl inside me, still trying to hand her father a crayon drawing and hear, "You did good, sweetheart." But fairy tales don't play out that way in real life, especially when the love you're chasing was never real to begin with. I arrived at my parents' estate the afternoon before the reunion, the car key tucked in its box, the envelope still hidden deep in my purse. My mother was at her book club, as planned. I wanted this moment to be just between me and him. He opened the door in his usual country club weekend attire, khakis, loafers, a button-down, and looked surprised to see me. "Claire," he said, glancing at his watch, "you're early. The reunion's tomorrow." "I know. I brought your Father's Day gift. Thought I'd give it to you privately," I said, trying to sound casual. My heart was pounding. He opened the box, looked at the key fob, and blinked once. "This is a Mercedes key," he said flatly. "Go look in the driveway," I replied. We walked to the window. The sleek black S-Class gleamed in the late afternoon sun. He stared at it in silence. "It's yours," I added. "All yours." For a moment I thought I saw something like pride in his face. But it passed. He turned back to me and said, "This is excessive. What are you trying to prove?" "Nothing," I lied. "I got a big promotion. I wanted to do something nice for you." He didn't thank me. Not really. Instead, he began circling the car, asking questions about insurance, depreciation, and whether I paid cash or financed. The questions felt more like an audit than gratitude. He took a test drive around the block. When we got back, instead of leaving the car in the driveway, he parked it inside the garage. I stood there watching as he turned off the engine and muttered, "You must be doing well to waste money like this." I smiled. I nodded. I swallowed the familiar sting and told myself tomorrow will be different. But it wasn't. At the reunion, the car was suddenly back in the driveway, parked front and center. He gave 3 different tours of it to his business friends, pointing out its features like he'd won it in a poker game. Not once did he mention where it came from. Later, I overheard him say, "When you work hard, you earn the right to treat yourself." That sentence didn't include me. That night, my best friend Taylor called. When I told her everything, she said, "Take the car back. He doesn't deserve it." But I still hoped. I still believed that maybe, in front of everyone else, he'd finally say something kind. I clung to that illusion because I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. 3 months before the reunion, it all started with curiosity. A simple DNA test from an ancestry site just for fun, I thought. I wanted to know more about where I came from, learn about my roots. But the results didn't make sense. The markers didn't align with the Harrington lineage. Something was off. The region data, the ancestral breakdown, it pointed to someone entirely different on my paternal pie. At first I dismissed it. Maybe it was an error. Maybe it was a fluke. But I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. The one that whispered, "You've always felt like an outsider. What if this is why?" So during a brief visit home, I slipped into my father's bathroom and carefully collected a few strands from his hairbrush. I mailed them to a private lab under a pseudonym. I told no one, not even Taylor. The results came back a week later. I didn't open them right away. I stared at the envelope for 2 days, afraid that the truth might actually explain everything I never wanted to admit. When I finally opened it, the answer was simple, clear, clinical. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. Richard Harrington was not my biological father. My first reaction was numbness. No tears, no anger, just silence. Like something inside me had gone very still. Then came the slow flood of memories, moments that suddenly made sense. The way he never touched me the way he did Jack and Sophie. The absence of warmth, the cutting comments, the moments he forgot my birthday but never theirs. I wondered, did he know? Had he always known? I couldn't prove it, not yet, but a part of me believed he did. That every cold glance, every withheld compliment, was punishment for something I had no control over my very existence. And yet, I didn't confront him. I didn't scream or send the test results. Instead, I folded the document, sealed it in a plain envelope, and tucked it into the bottom of my purse. I told myself it was for safekeeping, but in truth I was carrying a loaded weapon. That envelope wasn't just evidence. It was a reckoning. Dinner that evening unfolded like every other year. Same perfectly folded napkins, same imported wine, same assigned seats that somehow always put me far from the head of the table. Jack sat beside our father, his wife on his arm, their children praised for awards and hobbies. Sophie was nearby too, close enough to receive quiet affirmations and smiles. I was seated between a distant cousin and one of Dad's junior business partners, like a guest at my own family's table. I sipped wine and listened, outwardly calm but boiling inside. When my recent promotion was briefly mentioned by my mother, my father cut in before she could finish. "Speaking of finance," he said, turning to one of his friends, "what do you make of the latest Fed announcement?" He didn't even look at me. And then came the moment. The one that cracked the facade completely. During dessert, one of his business associates politely asked, "Claire, I hear you've made quite the name for yourself in New York." I opened my mouth to respond, but my father spoke first. "Claire's always been more interested in proving something than building something," he said, swirling his bourbon. "Some people chase titles because they're trying to fill other voids." The table fell quiet. I could feel every eye turn toward me. I froze, trying to keep my face neutral. And then he delivered the line that shattered everything. "A real legacy," he said, lifting his glass, "comes from continuing family traditions, not from making noise in industries no one remembers 5 years later." I looked at him, really looked at him, the man I had tried to impress for 3 decades. And in that moment, I didn't see a father. I saw a man afraid of anyone he couldn't control. I reached into my purse, pulled out the envelope, and laid it gently in front of him. "For you," I said. "Happy Father's Day." He blinked, confused, but didn't touch it. "I've spent my whole life trying to be enough for you," I continued, my voice steady, clear, unmistakably final. "But now I know. You never wanted me to be enough, because I was never yours to begin with." Gasps rippled around the table. My mother went pale. Jack looked like he might leap across the table. Sophie, sweet, brave Sophie, covered her mouth. I stood up, adjusted my dress, and added, "You paraded that car like it was yours to brag about. Now I'm taking it back, just like I'm taking back everything you ever made me doubt about myself." And then I left. I walked through the foyer, into the cool night, the stunned silence of the dinner party echoing behind me. The Mercedes sat gleaming in the driveway, right where he'd displayed it for all to see. I pressed the unlock button. The lights blinked in recognition, and with the same steady calm I'd learned to master in boardrooms, I drove away. Not just from the house, but from the version of myself who had waited too long for someone else's approval. By the time I checked into my hotel in downtown Boston, my phone had exploded with missed calls and messages. 17 calls, 29 texts, and counting. The first ones were from Sophie. Her messages came in quick bursts. "What just happened?" "Claire, please call me. Everyone's freaking out. Dad's saying insane things. Mom locked herself in her room. Jack is threatening legal action over the car." I ignored Jack's texts entirely. Both were cold, legalistic, and full of bluster. "Return Dad's property immediately. Retract your accusations before this becomes public." Property, accusations, that was how he saw it. My mother's voicemails were more complex. The first was calm, measured, even. "Claire, please come home. Hey, we need to talk." The second cracked. The fifth was nearly a sob. "The test can't be right. There must be some mistake. Please, come back, please." I sat on the edge of the bed, the city lights outside blurring through the window. I felt strangely calm, detached. This wasn't grief. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. For the first time, the emotional chaos of my family wasn't swirling inside me, it was outside, in voicemails and threats and silence from the people who had always benefited from my silence. Then came the call I answered. "Sophie?" Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm safe," I told her. "What's happening there?" "Chaos," she whispered. "Dad read the test at the table, in front of everyone. Then he shouted for Mom. They locked themselves in his study. 10 minutes later, he came out looking for you. When he saw the car was gone, he just lost it. I've never seen him like that, Claire. Never. I closed my eyes, imagining the scene, my father unraveling for once. Not composed, not collected. Just undone. A man who had controlled every narrative, finally facing one he couldn't spin. It didn't bring joy, but it brought something better. Freedom. The next morning, I sat in the quiet corner of a cafe, staring at the message draft on my phone. It was addressed to Thomas Keller. I had found his name in old college yearbooks and later, through public records. He had been an engineering student at MIT the same time my mother was at Wellesley, so I'd followed breadcrumbs through alumni newsletters and LinkedIn profiles until I was sure. He was my biological father. So I didn't know what I wanted from him. Closure, maybe. Not love. I wasn't foolish enough to think one man could replace the absence left by another. But I needed to reach out to at least acknowledge the truth that had rewritten my entire identity. I wrote carefully, explained who I was, what I discovered, and how I came to find him. I assured him I wasn't asking for anything, just offering him the chance to know if he wanted. His reply came 3 days later. It was gentle, thoughtful, cautious, but kind. I'm shocked, he wrote. I never knew. Your mother and I parted ways suddenly. I never had the chance to know. He didn't deny anything. He didn't deflect. He asked how I was doing and told me he'd be in Manhattan for a conference next month. If you're comfortable, he added, perhaps we could meet for coffee. There were no grand promises, no declarations of love, but there was respect, recognition. And that, I realized, was more than I had ever received from the man who raised me. Even his one sentence, I see from your email signature that you work in finance, impressive, felt like a balm. Not because it praised my title, but because it saw me as a person, not a performance. I didn't know what would come of it, whether Thomas and I would build a relationship, or whether this moment was simply a quiet acknowledgement of shared blood. But I knew this much. I wasn't a secret anymore. I wasn't a disappointment. And I wasn't someone who had to keep proving her worth to people who refused to see it. Not anymore. 6 months passed, and life didn't so much explode as quietly rearrange itself. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I was finally ready to understand what had shaped me. My achievements, I learned, weren't just ambition, they were survival, a child's attempt to earn love through performance. But now, I no longer needed to perform. My relationship with my mother shifted. We met weekly. At first it was awkward. She didn't know how to talk to me without makeup or rehearsed lines. But slowly we began telling the truth about everything. About Thomas. About her fear. About how silence can damage more than any lie. And then, one rainy Thursday in October, I met Thomas in person. It was quiet. Simple. A lunch near Central Park. He looked like me around the eyes, in the way he tilted his head when listening. We didn't talk about missed birthdays or absent years. We talked about the market, about books, about the kind of music we liked. We talked like two people who shared something without needing to define it. He didn't try to be my father. He just showed up with curiosity and kindness. That was enough. I sold the Mercedes, used the money to fund a down payment on a small investment property. Something of my own, something that built toward my future, not someone else's approval. Sophie and I grew closer. She called just to chat, sometimes to cry, sometimes to share childhood memories I had buried. She never tried to explain Dad's behavior. She just acknowledged it. And that was healing in its own way. The man who had always erased me was now silent. And yet, in that silence, I was finally becoming whole. Not because of a name, not because of DNA, but because I had chosen truth and walked away from everything that denied it. This past Thanksgiving, I didn't go home. I went to Sophie's instead. Her kids were playing in the living room. Her husband was carving the turkey. It was warm, imperfect, and real. Richard wasn't there. When he learned I'd be attending, he declined the invitation. No surprise. His pride was too brittle to survive the truth. And honestly, his absence felt like fresh air. Later that night, my mother called. "I'm proud of you, Claire," she said. "Not for your title, not for your apartment, but for who you are, your courage, your clarity, your heart. I should have told you that every day." I sat in silence, letting the words sink in. Not because I needed them to heal, but because they finally felt real. Here's what I've learned. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes the people who should love us the most are the ones who harm us the deepest. But we don't have to stay in those roles. We don't have to keep auditioning for affection. You can choose peace over performance. You can reclaim your story. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. So is living fully, freely, and unapologetically as yourself. If this story touched you, share it, comment below, and remember,